This video is brought to you by MoviePalette.com. Hey everyone, do you have a favorite movie that you would love to hang on your wall but you can't think of what scene or what poster to get? Well, now you can get the entire movie on one high quality canvas. With MoviePalette.com, you can get every scene from your favorite movie, or more specifically, the dominant color of every scene from your favorite movie in chronological order on a great high quality canvas. It also comes with a silver engraving of the title down at the bottom. It has rubber stoppers on the back to keep it from bouncing. And they have a huge catalog of what to choose from. Whether you're a horror fan, or a fan of sci-fi, Marvel, Japanese anime, Disney animation, drama, or Oscar classics, there's a movie palette for you. And right now, MoviePalette.com is having a sale for 50% off for their Halloween sale. But if you go right now, and if you enter room 15, you'll get 15% off of the movie palette of your choice. That's ROOM15 for 15% off of your movie palette. Again, this is a great value for a great piece of home decor that looks great for any film and for any film buff and anywhere in your home. You will definitely like this product. Mine is of The Shining, and I could not be happier with it. So definitely go to MoviePalette.com and enter ROOM15 for 15% off of your palette. Hey horror fans, welcome back to 1237, back with another review. And this is a review that I did not expect to be able to do. This is one I did not think I was going to be able to see, at least until it came out on DVD. It did come out to theaters, not in my hometown, so I didn't get to see it. I think it's now on Shudder, which I don't have, so I don't get to see it on there. But it did just now come to my hometown for some event. It's only playing for a few nights, and I got to see it. And it is a sequel to a film that I'm a huge fan of. Love it to death. I waited 3 years for this to come out, and I really couldn't be happier to see it in theaters. And that, of course, is Terrifier 2, which, yeah, did get to see it on the big screen, which I was very thankful for. And before I start talking about Terrifier 2, the first film, one of the most entertaining, definitely one of my favorite horror films of the 2010s. I can't really say it's one of the best made. It's not like an A24 film, but it's definitely one of the most entertaining and still one of my favorites. It definitely, probably my favorite, like, Renaissance slasher, more modern slasher. Art the Clown, as far as modern horror icons from like 2000 onward, he's got to be my favorite. Either him or Jigsaw, but for very different reasons. I do have this collectible Terrifier knife that my girlfriend got me, which I do think is very cool. Now, I have said before that clown movies, I think, are criminally overrated. I'm not a fan of. But Art being a mime, I think, just adds another level to creepiness to it. And just a lot of stuff he's able to do with no voice, it really just, what he embodies, I think, is very interesting and kind of really creepy. The way they'll just have a character look over, then when it cuts to Art and he's just like standing there in some position with like a dog kind of music, it's very creepy. So I love the first film. Of course, this was supposed to come out back in 2019. It was supposed to be filmed, made, and released in 2019. COVID happened. That messed everything up. So it came out now, 3 years later, 2022. A lot of it was crowdfunded, so there were a lot of people that wanted to see it. This movie's kind of been known or being circulated as like the goriest film that's been made. In recent years, I would agree to that. I have seen some much gorier films than this. There have been talks about, EMTs being called for fainting and vomiting. That happens every time you get like a notoriously graphic movie. this it wasn't any gorier than other stuff I've seen, but if you are going for gore and kills, this is definitely the movie to see this year because there is a lot. What writer, director, and creator Damien Leone knows is 70s slashers. They're late 70s, early 80s slashers. And this movie does exactly what those slashers should have done with sequels, or if they did them right. Bigger, bloodier body count, harder to kill villain, and just everything you did in the first one, just up the ante. And this one does that in spades. Now, before I get too far into it, I do want to say this is a spoiler-filled review. So if you care about spoilers, even though it doesn't really give anything away story-wise, go ahead and click off, find a way to see it, then come back. But yeah, it's not like it answers a whole lot of questions. But yeah, this will have spoilers, which I was worried because the thing about Art the Clown is I know people want answers to everything. People want to know where Art came from, who he is, why he does what he does, how he's able to do what he does, and all that shit. To me, Art is like the Creeper, Jeepers Creepers, or the Grabber from Black Phone, where we don't need to know anything. There's enough mystique and intrigue behind him to help carry a film. And I'm perfectly fine with just watching this charismatic, silent mime who's full of personality, sort of embodies the spirit of Halloween, whose only motivation is to just scare, mutilate, and kill people in the most sadistic way possible. I don't need a backstory. And yes, I do know Leone is looking into a Terrifier 3, possibly a 4, slowly build Art's backstory, which really has me worried. But, and that might be why I prefer the first film over this one. I mean, I still enjoy this one, but I think I still enjoy the first one. I think Art was a bit creepier in the first one. There was still that question as to whether he's supernatural or human, save for the ending. Here, that's really the only thing it answers, is he supernatural? It doesn't answer anything else. But it's still a bloody, gory, fun time. Also, keep in mind, it is 2 hours and 20 minutes, which did kind of have me nervous. But, you know, it made the best of that time. I would say up until the climax, it started to drag. But you don't really go that long without some bloody, gory kill or Art just doing what Art does. So, of course, written and directed by Damien Leone, produced by a slew of people, stars Lauren Lavera, Elliot Fulham, Sarah Voigt, Kaylee Hyman, Casey Hartnett, I think is what it said on the screen. David Howard Thornton returns as Art, but you get cameos by, who did it say? Chris Jericho has a cameo. Felissa Rose, Angela from Sleepaway Camp. Tamara Glynn plays a shopping mother. She was in Halloween 5, also Freddy's Nightmares. And Samantha Scafidi returns as Vicky from the first movie. And the cast does pretty much a good job. The only people I'd say I didn't like would have been Elliot Fulham as the lead's younger brother. I don't think he was that great. And Sarah Voigt as their mother, because she was just a bitch. And I'm guessing that was the point she was supposed to be. I found her kind of insufferable. But also put out by Bloody Disgusting. Music by Rostislav Vainstock and Paul Wiley. George Stuber did the cinematography. Now, the whole idea behind the character of Sienna and her sort of Amazonian angel costume actually came from a short film called The Ninth Circle from 2009 by Damien Leone, which he decided to incorporate that into Terrifier 2. And basically, it takes place a year after Terrifier. Well, it opens up with him fleeing the morgue from the end of the first film. He graphically kills the coroner there. Then he goes to a laundromat where he just strips down, washes his clothes, and I would say art is a bit more humorous in this one. It still has the scenes I liked where whenever the camera cuts to him, he's just like standing there perfectly still with a face or in a pose. It still has those, which was some of my favorite things that he did in the first film. But he seems to be a lot more giddy or sadistically gleeful in this one. Like he's doing a lot more like silent, like laughing, and like even when he's in the laundromat naked, except for his face paint, looking at a newspaper like car crash kills family of 4. And then we're introduced to this young girl who kind of looks like a Dakota Fanning with art makeup. And she becomes like this vision that only he can see. It kind of becomes his helper. My theory is that she's kind of like the Crow for The Crow. You know, sort of like his guide, the supernatural guide, someone there to help him. And so then we just focus on this family, like this brother, sister, Sienna, Jonathan. Their father killed himself somewhat recently. He was like a cartoonist or artist. He had a brain tumor. Then he drove himself. It caused a car crash. He committed suicide via car crash. But we find out later that he was having visions of art, and it was trying to show that their father knew about art, and I was dreading them saying that art was their father, that it was going to be some sort of revelation. Thankfully, it doesn't go that route. And it doesn't really explain their connection, their father and art, which, now, I am the kind of person that likes ambiguity, and I feel like they could have answered that aspect, like how did he know about art, how or why, as long as they didn't mess with the mystique or intrigue of art himself. I'd rather him be completely ambiguous as possible. I don't need to know his origin. I don't need to know what made him supernatural. I don't need to know any of that. I just want to see art on screen doing what he does. He's that kind of villain. But I know people just need to know. People will want a sequel showing where he buys his clown costume. I mean, people need to know every little aspect, which I think is kind of bullshit. But that's why we get overly explained, saturated franchises, because things have to be spoon-fed. But thankfully it doesn't do that. And it does have that feeling where it's trying to set itself up or try to plant these seeds to be answered later on, which I do have a problem with. You're able to get away with it in Saw, because at least with Saw, that's a little deeper than a slasher film. And you're also guaranteed a sequel the next year. But this movie does a lot of setting up and not a lot of payoff, which thankfully it didn't explain anything about art other than, yes, he is supernatural. He is able to die or be killed and then come back, which they do it 2 different ways in this film. I guess it matters on if he's beyond repair or not. And so then basically it's just art going after these 2 kids on Halloween. They start seeing visions of art. sort of being haunted the same way their father was. Sienna is making this costume that's based on this like Amazonian angel that her father created. The younger brother wants to dress up as Art. And the movie tries to make him look like a blooming serial killer to everyone else. Like, think of like Drop Dead Fred. Like, Art is doing stuff that he gets blamed for. And people think he's like obsessed with serial killers and. Yeah. But it's Art setting up so he gets in trouble. And I didn't really buy the kid that much. I did think the lead did a good job. And we basically just see Art, kind of like Halloween, following her and then killing off her friends, the people she knows, then eventually going after her. And that's basically it. Now, I know people say that this had more of a story and more character building than the first film, which, for me, the first film was, okay, it had the tone, the atmosphere, the aesthetic, like the gritty, grainy film, like sort of look to the film, the 80s synth score, a really identifiable, really cool new villain that just loves to mutilate and kill people. That to me was enough for a slasher film. I didn't have a problem with lack of story. It's basically just a collection of scenes showing Art doing fucked up shit. Here, yeah, there is more of a story, but I don't think it really served much of a purpose because it's still just a bunch of collections of scenes where, they go to this Halloween store. He kills the cashier once they leave. One of her friends stays home to pass out candy. Art shows up and kills her. And then her mother comes home, kills her mother. And then goes to the lead girl's house, kills her mother. It just kind of goes all over the place, killing all these people associated with her. Granted, they're all very graphic. They're all gory as hell. Yeah, he is doing a lot of like silent laughing and clapping. Oh, he is more gleeful in this one than he is kind of creepy, more sinister in the first one. But I mean, like, he is. I do like the idea that his trash bag is just full of rusty implements. From the first film, they bring that back. That's part of his character. I like the fact that he goes to the friend's house and, like, the trash bag insisting on candy. He kills her, and I mean, it just drags on forever. Just when you think she's dead, I mean, he, like, grabs a hold of her hand, rips her hand in half, bangs her elbow up and rips her arm off, just hacking up her face. She becomes so mutilated that when she's still alive and trying to move, it is kind of glitchy. And then when he kills the mother, he takes her head, hollows it out so when kids come to trick or treat, he lets them all take candy out of her head. That was cool. And and then like the daughter, the lead, which I do think she did fine as an actress. There was some character building. They do make her the hero. I found the climax kind of confusing and not really making a whole lot of sense. It really was trying to set up stuff for another film. But Art is able to take her brother. The little Art girl is able to mimic his voice to get her to go to this carnival. They have this showdown, which even the lead was killed, but she's able to be resurrected from this warrior sword that her dad gave her. But she like falls in this hole that's in like a dunk tank where she's in this room full of people that was killed earlier in a dream sequence. It's very odd. The climax is very confusing. really, to me, I don't think the story amounted to much. Uh, if they had explained, okay, how the dad knows about art, maybe there's something. I would have rather had just a straightforward, you know, almost plotless collection of kill scenes like the first film, than a sequel that's just trying to set up ideas for another sequel. I am glad they didn't really answer anything about art other than him being supernatural. But yeah, the ending I found a bit confusing. Like, what while they're all fighting, and they do give a good number of blows to each other, but she seems to die. They get brought back by the sword. She decapitates him. That little girl takes Art's head away, and then we get this mid-credit scene where Vicky from the first film, who has a new look to her, at the psychiatric hospital, she's giving birth. A nurse comes in. It seemed kind of from the Brood. She gives birth to Art's new head, which is alive. She takes it out. She starts to lick it clean, kind of like the Brood, and it just ends with Art's new head kind of smiling and winking. And there are nods to other films, like we see people watching Haunt, uh, House on Haunted Hill. Wow, I kept wanting to say House on Haunted Hill, Night of the Living Dead, Plan 9 from Outer Space. I've heard people say some of the deaths are nods to other films. Like he does scalp this one girl, that rip her scalp off. And people say that's the Maniac kill, which if Damien Leone says that's true, then I'll buy it. But to me, every death is so different that he's got to mutilate people in as many different ways as possible. That just seems like a whole different idea. It would kind of be like if he shoved a cleaver in someone's face. It was, they say, oh, it's like Friday the 13th Part 4 with Crispin Glover. Kind of, I mean, I see where they're coming from, but, every death is bloody and gruesome. Again, not the goriest I've seen. Not, I wouldn't even say it's quite as gory as people are making it out to be. Like, goriest movie ever made, but it is a very excessive. There is plenty of blood, plenty of gore. Every death is different. Every death is like a prolonged torture scene. And, everyone gets it differently. Even one friend's boyfriend just gets stabbed in the crotch a bunch of times. So that's awesome. Well, actually, there's another one that's like Maniac, where the lead's mother, Art, has a sawed-off shotgun and just blows her face off. But, okay, so there is more character development in this one, and I know they were trying to make the Sienna character sort of like the Tommy Jarvis, I guess. But where a lot of it did feel like it was just trying to set things up for future films instead of worrying about this one, I would almost just rather have the straightforward first film. Art is still fun as hell to watch. I mean, I had a great time every time Art was on screen. I mean, whether there's like the meme in the Halloween store where the lead's trying to buy something. Every time she looks over, Art's wearing different sunglasses and he's in like a different pose. There's stuff like that. Or, when he's making some kind of face, when the camera just cuts to him, he's making some kind of face, which has always been creepy. Also, like when he's doing like and then someone walks away, he gets all grumpy. I love that. I loved every scene Art was on screen. So, not too much to say about it. I mean, yeah, it's very excessive. I mean, Art is more over the top. The kills are more over the top. It tries to try to build on Art's background slowly, but set things up for sequels. The only thing it explains is that he's supernatural. I mean, when he dies, he's able to come back. Now, at the end of the first film, beginning of this one, he just came back. But with this, maybe because he lost his head, that Victoria has to birth a whole other head. Or maybe it depends on who that little girl gives it to. Who knows? But would I want to see a Terrifier 3? Sure, if they go back to the first film. Just give us a movie that feels like an 80s slasher where we just get to see Art do his own thing. I wouldn't worry about story. I mean, that's why I like the first one more. I'm not worried about Art's background. I'm not concerned with what makes him tick or what made him supernatural or why he's a mime or any of that bullshit. But I am glad I finally got to see Terrifier 2. It was a lot of fun in the theater. It did have that same 80s style synth score, which I thought was great. And I waited 3 years for this to come out. And, I'm glad I didn't have to get a streaming service to see it. I'm just glad I got to see it in theaters. It was really a lot of fun. And, Art is definitely one of my top 2 or my favorite modern horror icon. Again, with Jigsaw, he's a very deep, complex character. He's one that you can explain everything. Art, he can be a bit ambiguous, and I think that's where he works best. And David Thornton Howard, he hasn't lost a touch of what makes Art, performance-wise. It's all in the physicality. They didn't try to give him a voice or making any kind of noises, which was great. And we made it through another movie where they didn't give too much away, which I'm glad. I want him to stay ambiguous. But I was not disappointed. I was only really disappointed by the climax, only because it was kind of confusing. But other than that, very fun film, a very fun slasher film. A bigger, bloodier, more broad sequel. Definitely, for all intents and purposes, it is a slasher sequel, and I would say it is a well-done one. So that is Terrifier 2, and thank you for watching.